Hi guys, you're here, Fortean Words, episode 10, doing L. Ron Hubbard in England. This is my first show on my own, and bit of housekeeping to start with. Don't forget that I do my movie show, Dope Movies and Shows. Tuesday nights from 7 till 9. We're doing Land of Grub and Glory. That's with me and Mosley talking politics. And if anybody wants to become my new co-host for Fortean Words, just DM me. I am Hemmingford Grey at tutanota.com. I am Sir H Grey 12, Sir H Grey on Twitter. At Sir H Grey on Twitter. I'm also Sir H Grey 1290 at gmail.com. If you want to just let me know, or if you just want to feedback on the show, just let me know that way. So this week we're doing Scientology in the United Kingdom. Obviously we like to be a British podcast here, so I'm just going to cover the time when L. Ron Hubbard was in the United Kingdom. L. Ron Hubbard, as you know, is the founder and creator of Scientology. Rumor has it was a bet with Robert Heinlein, the sci-fi author. L. Ron Hubbard, so called, the L actually stands for Lafayette, so his full name is Lafayette Ronald Hubbard. That is one heck of a name, isn't it? So let's dive into this. So, Scientology in the United Kingdom is practiced mainly within the Church of Scientology and its related groups, which go under names including Hubbard Academy of Personal Independence, Dianetics Scientology Life Improvement Centre. The national headquarters and the former global headquarters is St Hill Manor in East Grinstead, which for 7 years was the home of L. Ron Lafayette, the Pulp Fiction author who created Scientology. The time he was here. So I need to stop saying so. The Church of Scientology. Currently, they claim they've got 118,000 members, including 15,000 regular participants. But in the past, they reckon they've had up to 200,000 members. However, in the 2001 census, which you should be able to find online, no problem, which included an optional question about religion, it gave us an actual figure of 1,781. If you guys know anything about Scientology, you know that one of the things they do like to do is they like to inflate figures, facts, anything. It really is a really interesting religion to have a look into. Right, So as you know, in America, the Scientology has got full religious status after a campaign against the FBI to do so. Apparently, there was a lot of dirty tricks went on, a lot of intimidation, but the UK government still hasn't classified the Church of Scientology as a religious institution. The church's application for charity status in England and Wales was rejected in 1999 on the grounds there is no public benefit arising out of the practice of Scientology. I'm pretty much, if you know about Scientology, you know that most people consider it a cult. And the church didn't appeal this decision. However, the Church of Scientology got itself a victory when it was actually made exempt from a UK value-added tax, or VAT as we call it, on the basis that it's a not-for-profit body. As a result of this, Revenue and Customs reportedly had to return several £1 million worth of past VAT payments to the institution. In December 2013, the UK Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the London Church of Scientology Chapel was a place of meeting for religious worship and should be registered as a place for marriage. A government minister expressed concern the decision might affect the future legal status of Scientology. Also, if you know about, also with Scientology, it's a very creeping religion. So they'll get one decision, and that one decision will maybe be pulled in at a later date and widened out. So it might be one worth worth keeping an eye on. So the church itself is not a charity, but several of its related organisations do, including Greenfield School and Narconon, which is their drug treatment centre, which has its own controversies, shall we say. So that's that, Narconon. So the governing organisation of Scientology in UK, the Church of Scientology Religious Education College Inc., CORSI, is a corporation that is actually registered in South Australia. Australia has Scientology in Australia has managed to put down some pretty hefty roots. While the court judgment there recognises Scientology as a religion, CORSI itself is not actually registered as a charity. In 1999, the Church of Scientology provided documents to the Charity Commission, including a letter purported to originate from the Ministry of Defence that confirmed that Scientology is an officially recognised religion in the Royal Navy. However, 2012, the Navy Personnel Management Manual, Chapter 31, Religions and Faiths, makes no reference to Scientology. The prison service in England and Wales does not recognise Scientology as a religion, but prisoners who are registered as Scientologists may practice their religion and are given access to the representative of the Church of Scientology if they wish to receive its ministry. Under Scots law, Scientology ministers have been authorised to perform marriages in Scotland, even prior to the December 2013 Supreme Court decision. So as you know, how Scientology started. It started with a book called Dianetics. Various things happen with Dianetics. You can have a look into it for yourselves. But Dianetics, I think somebody else owned the copyright for it. So then Dianetics had to be dropped, and then later Dianetics became the Hubbard Association of Scientology. So down to L. Ron Hubbard's time in England, from 1957 to 1959. Lafayette lived and wrote at Fitzroy House in the West End of London. The house was sold off in. Hold on one second. I'll just get a picture of the man himself up. There he is, the man himself, Mr. Lafayette Ronald Hubbard. So right, hold on. I've lost my thread. So 57 to 59, Hubbard was in Fitzroy House in the West End of London, but the house was sold off in 1968, but later brought back by the Church of Scientology, and now it's a museum in honour of Hubbard. If you want to go and see the great man and his works, right. So after he left there, 1959, the global headquarters of Scientology, they then moved to St Hill Manor. That's the manor there pictured. Some very nice looking place it is too. So moved into St Hill Manor. So we've got a brief history of St Hill Manor. If you have a look at St Hill Manor, this is according to Scientology, so there could well be some embellishment here. So, while internationally renowned as the home of L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Dianetics and Scientology, St Hill Manor is also among the most historically significant estates in Sussex. The first record of St Hill appears in 1567 when Stephen Board of Cuckfield left in his will 1 cottage and 12 acres of pasture held by Thomas Nicholas of his manor of St Hill. The Old English translation of saint is singed or burnt, a reference to the practice of clearing sites through burning. It will be another 150 years before St Hill, by then spelt in its Latin form, which is Saynt, I think, would appear again in public records. The entry dating from 1715 cites acquisition of the property by John Crawford of Ardmillan, Scotland. Crawford went on to build a family home on the site of the present St Hill Manor, completing construction in 1733. Today, a watercolour of Crawford's Jacobean-style house, painted by renowned landscapist James Lambert of Lewes, resides in the British Museum's Burrell Manuscripts collection. So, in 1792, eldest son and heir Gibbs Crawford pulled down the Jacobean house to build a home of domestic comfort and luxury. After hiring local stonemason Henry Pocock, construction began on the Grand County manor that stands today. The structure, a fine example of the late Georgian style, was built with locally quarried Sussex and sandstone. While the building's architect cannot be fully confirmed, surviving construction records strongly suggest the manor was in part the work of Benjamin Henry Latrobe, most noted for his designs of the United States Capitol building and the White House. Maybe this is a reason that Lafayette decided to buy this place. There is a story about him buying the place, because apparently Lafayette bought the place. Apparently he bought it for £59,000 to pay off a gambling debt from the previous owner. So, lost my thread there. According to Crawford family history, St Hill passed from the Gibbs to the oldest son Charles, who in turn bequeathed the estate to his only son Robert in 1814. Robert, the last of the Crawford line to reside in the manor, served as a magistrate and was instrumental in establishing East Grinstead's first railway line. By the late 19th century, St Hill was home to Dr. March Cruikshank, a physician decorated for service to the armed forces and a renowned microbiologist who founded one of the first bacteriological laboratories. Under Cruikshank's stewardship, the estate greatly expanded, first with the east and west wing additions to the manor house, then with the building of the south lodge and gates in 1892, the north lodge and stables 5 years later. The lake and lily pond, now started the swimming pool, were also constructed over the course of Cruikshank's residence. So, nearly done this bit. During the Second World War, Mrs. Neville Lasky lived in the mansion. She opened its doors to convalescing Royal Air Force officers, patients of Sir Archibald Mackindoe, a pioneer in reconstructive surgery working at East Grinstead's Queen Victoria Hospital. Then, in October 1945, Mrs. Margaret Biddle, wife of an American ambassador in Europe, purchased St Hill Estate. Whilst only owning the manor for 2 years, she made a great many upgrades to the 30-room mansion, not the least of which was modernising the plumbing. However, the addition Miss Biddle is most remembered for is the whimsical mural she commissioned for the manor ballroom by artist John Spencer Churchill, nephew of Sir Winston Churchill. St Hill became the home of the Maharaja of Jaipur, India, in the late 1940s. During his decade of ownership, the Maharaja added a number of fine antique Indian and European fixtures to the residence. L. Ron Hubbard acquired St Hill Manor and some 60 surrounding acres in March 1959. The manor served as Mr. Hubbard's home and worldwide headquarters for Scientology until 1967. In commemoration of L. Ron Hubbard's centennial, 1911 to 2011, St Hill Manor underwent meticulous renovation and restoration by England's premier conservation design firms. Welcome to St Hill. Right, so that's a little bit about St Hill House. So St Hill House is in East Grinstead in Sussex. So it's a manor house dating from 1733, which we know. This is the most famous of the church's advanced organisations, delivering operating thetan training up to level 5. The estate contains a castle built by Scientologists in a medieval style, which opened up in 1989. Hubbard developed security checking during this era and ordered that check sheets would be forwarded to St Hill. So, as you know, security check. A little bit about Scientology. Scientology is a thing where you use the I can't remember what the machine's called for the life of me, but you use the machine, which is basically a lie detector. You get asked over and over again the same questions until you get what's going clear, which means that the needle on the E meter goes clear, which means it stays in the middle and doesn't move. So what happens in security check-ins? That's when you're asked more advanced questions, which means it's harder to go clear. So again in 68 the Scientologists tried to have their East Grinstead Chapel officially recognised as a place of religious worship. Which is a bit of a thing you see here. They just keep trying all of the time to become a religion. So in 68 they were rejected by the Registrar General. They took the case to the Court of Appeal and lost in the case known as R versus Registrar General XP Seagadal. The judge commented that Scientology was more of a philosophy of the existence of man or life rather than a religion. So the definition of religion that was functional in the Seagadal case was that religion is concerned with man's relation to God, and ethics are concerned with man's relation to man. The two are not the same and are not made the same by sincere inquiry into the question, what is God? Religion was defined as requiring faith in and worship of a God. Right then. So also, if you ever want to look round East Grinstead, Scientologists own several shops in East Grinstead High Street and are active in the Chamber of Commerce. They run an annual medieval fair at the manor, which sounds like it might be worth a look. When Religion Inc., Stuart Lamont's unfavourable book about Scientology, was released in 1986, all the copies available in East Grinstead were bought up by one man. Again, more of the tricks involved in Scientology. They do all kinds of tricks. You know, if you want to look into it more, it's well worth a look. It's a really, really interesting religion. Scientologists own a number of other properties around the town. One of the communal houses burnt down in 1991. Since then, the church has been prosecuted by the local council over fire safety. The Independent newspaper acquired documents in 1993 suggesting the Scientologists had deceived council inspectors, pretending one dormitory housed 50 people when in fact there were 130 permanent residents. During the 70s, the church's intelligence operations were directed from St Hill by the Guardian Worldwide Jane Kember and her deputy Mo Budlong. These include Operation Snow White, which was a campaign of burglary, infiltration and wiretapping of US government offices, and the IRS, and various dirty tricks against opponents. Kember and Budlong were extradited to the US, where in November 1980 they were sentenced to 2 to 6 years in prison. So this is Van Dyke. So in a House of Commons speech on 25th of July 1968, Minister of Health Kenneth Robinson said Scientology's practices were a potential menace to the personality and well-being of those so deluded as to become its followers. He described Scientology as so objectionable that it would be right to take all steps to curb its growth, and so introduced a ban on the immigration of foreign Scientologists. It would be nice if we could do that again today with other invasive religions, wouldn't it? Until then, the Hubbard College of Scientology had, as a recognised educational institution, been allowed to receive foreign students. Foreign Scientologists already in the country were not allowed to stay. According to an internal document from 1976, some of the church's intelligence staff got round the ban by giving false information to immigration officials. Hubbard left the UK permanently in 1969, moving Scientology's world headquarters to a fleet of ships. This is also known as the Sea Org. The Home Office told him not to return, so he's right up there with Lawrence Southern and Richard Spencer. Scientologists denounced Kenneth Robinson's remarks as insane. In retaliation against him, Scientology publications listed Freedom and Scientology, and Freedom conducted a libel campaign beginning in 1968. According to these newsletters, he was responsible for creating death camps to which innocent people were being kidnapped to be killed or maimed at will. Robinson successfully sued for libel, prompting a total retraction and subsequent substantial damages. This is another common practice you see in Scientology time and time again. They do like to wage lawfare. If you watch the amazing document, not amazing, it's a bit dated now, but if you watch the documentary We Are Legion, it shows how Scientology actually defeated Anonymous, or certain parts of Anonymous. So there was a government inquiry in 1971 which recommended lifting the ban on Scientologists coming in the country, by which time 145 people had been refused entry. The ban was not immediately lifted. The church took out multiple writs of libel against the Department of Health and Social Security, who in 1977 prepared a confidential report released to the public 30 years later to assess their position. According to this report, young people were being alienated from their families by the disconnection policy. So you've got what's called the disconnection policy, where what happens is people do something wrong. They have some sort of desire to leave or something like that. So what they can be called suppressive persons. So suppressive. Hold on, I've lost that. Hold on. Right, so you have suppressive persons, which can be abbreviated to SP, is a term used in Scientology to describe the antisocial personalities, in scare quotes, who, according to Scientology's founder L. Ron Hubbard, make up about 2.5% of the population. So a suppressive person is somebody that can cause trouble. So you can be labelled an SP, but you can also be labelled a PTS, which is a potential trouble source. So basically, what happens if you're a suppressive person or a potential trouble source, you'll get drummed out of. So you will In some cases, some people have been punished for this, which includes being locked up, washing floors with toothbrushes, that kind of thing. Either that, or if you can get away, you're then labelled a suppressive person and disconnected from your family. So when you're a suppressive person, anybody who's still in, if you're out of the church and there are other people that are still in the church, this means that you're then not allowed to talk to those people. So you got the report now. So according to the report, so people know, so the government know about the disconnection policy. So now there's another policy which is called fair game. All of these policies are written down in documents, and when someone's labelled an SP or fair game, all of these things are written down in documents in like the laws of Scientology. So and they even tell you how to go about dealing with people who are suppressive persons, and how to go about fair game. So in 1965, Hubbard formulated the Fair Game Law, which states how to deal with people who interfere in Scientology's activities. These suppressive persons could be considered fair game for retaliation. So, in the words of Scientology, by fair game is meant may not be further protected by the codes, disciplines, or the rights of a Scientologist. In other words, a person who attacked the church would not be protected by the church or granted the rights of Scientologists in good standing. In December of that year, Hubbard reissued the policy with additional clarifications to define the scope of fair game. He made it clear that the policy applied to non-Scientologists as well, declaring, "The homes, property, places and abodes of persons who have been active in attempting to suppress Scientology or Scientologists are beyond any protection of Scientology ethics unless absolved by later ethics or an amnesty." This policy letter extends to suppressive non-Scientology wives and husbands and parents or other family members or hostile groups or even close friends. In his introduction to Scientology Ethics, published in 1968, Hubbard wrote that no Scientologist could be punished for any action taken against a suppressive person or group during the period that person or group is fair game. He made it clear elsewhere in his writings that the policy would be applied to external organisations, including governments that interfered with Scientology's activities. He told Scientologists, if the Internal Revenue Service, in refusing the FDC founding Church of Scientology, Washington DC non-profit status, continues to act up, or if the FDA does sue, we can of course Committee of Evidence them, and then if found guilty, label and punish them as a suppressive group and fair game. No one is fair game until he or she declares against us. By declares against us means either, you know, not letting them get their way, or just, you know, not wanting to be a member anymore. The dirty tricks, and there's plenty of great stuff that you can watch. There's the documentary Going Clear. There's also Leah Remini's Surviving Scientology. I can't remember what it's called, but that's a really good series if you want to know more about Scientology. So Scientology is a massive it's a massive subject. It's not just it's not just explaining what happened when, but it's also explaining what they mean when they say certain things. Scientology even has its own, it's like de facto language. The way they use language is completely not what you'd expect. So right, so 1980, the Home Secretary reversed the ban, saying in Parliament, "My right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Social Services, is not satisfied there is clear and sufficient evidence for continuing the existing policy with regard to Scientologists on medical grounds alone. Once the ban was lifted, applications by foreign Scientologists to come to the UK were assessed individually. However, all the applications were refused because of Scientology's non-religious status. This was changed in 1996 when the Home Office labelled Scientology a bona fide religion for immigration purposes. So again, they still haven't got the final piece of they still haven't got the final piece of law in their back pocket to say that this stuff is sorry, lost my thread. My right honourable friend so they don't actually, so at this point they haven't actually got religious status, but they're gathering more and more bits where they can kind of a bit here, a bit there, you know, in their corner about religion. So in '84, Hubbard contested his own exclusion from the UK, but this was reaffirmed by the Home Office when he refused to discuss his conviction in France for fraud. So, in 1971, there was an official inquiry into Scientology in the UK, and it was carried out by Sir John G. Foster and published in 1971. The report made its case with L. Ron Hubbard's own words and reprinted a number of internal ethics orders. It continued that it would be unfair to ban Scientology outright. It appears according to Scientology that the only ethics there is a place just a little bit away, just outside London. It concluded that it would be unfair to ban Scientology outright, but asked for legislation to ensure that psychotherapy in the United Kingdom is delivered in an ethical manner. He regarded the Scientology version of ethics as inappropriate. So here's another thing about Scientology that you'll find out. Scientology's great enemy is psychotherapy. They absolutely hate psychotherapy because many of the practices that they do and many of their practices are kind of they're cult. It's cult-like and brainwashing type behaviour and blackmail and with what they call sec check-in and the just regular checks. What it is you're telling Scientology your innermost secrets, and all of that stuff is being written down and it's being filed. And by innermost secrets, you have to bare your soul. If you've murdered somebody, if you sexually assaulted somebody, anything like that, the chances are, if you're in Scientology, you've given that up to them, and now they know all of it. Your deepest, darkest secrets. And it doesn't have to be something serious like that. It could be like the little stuff, like affairs. Gay thoughts, because they've also upset the gays as well. Scientologists have, because they're not keen on homosexuality. I don't know if that has changed. So 1977, the FBI raids the Church of Scientology's US headquarters. Documents seized in that reveal that an agent had been sent to investigate Sir John Foster in an attempt to link him to Paulette Cooper, the author of The Scandal of Scientology and victim of Operation Freakout. Operation Freakout. Yeah, so Operation Freakout, I mean, there you go. Here's another story in itself. You got Operation Freakout. Which means a Church of Scientology covert plan intended to have the US author and journalist Paulette Cooper imprisoned or committed into a psychiatric hospital. So this was 1976. They were doing that. Also, the documents showed that also Lord Balneal, who had requested the official inquiry, was also a target. Hubbard had written, "Get a detective on that lord's past to unearth the tidbits." So, 1984, a custody dispute between a practicing Scientologist father and an ex-Scientologist mother came to the High Court. Although the father had stated he would not raise the 10-year-old boy and 8-year-old girl as Scientologists, obviously you remember the guy's a Scientologist, so he would say that. Mr. Justice Leahy ruled that they should reside with the mother. This would not otherwise have been the case, since it meant disrupting the status quo for the children due to the prospect of Scientology's baleful influence on their upbringing. So it appears that over here in good old Blighty we seem to be pretty woke to the SQ, the Scientologist question. So this case, it reached conclusions about many aspects of Scientology. So the case said that evidence was given how the disconnection policy had broken up families and relationships. Mr. Justice Leahy read some of Scientologists' internal documents into the record. These include training routine lying, the Guardian's order describing ways to investigate and smear traitors, and other documents relating to fair game. He concluded that despite the ostensible cancellation of fair game, deprival of property, injury by any means, trickery, suing, lying, or destruction have been pursued throughout, and to this day with the fullest possible vigour. Evidence had been given of instances of mental breakdown during auditing courses. The case produced evidence that a rehabilitation project force, an internal punishment system involving physical labour, was in operation in St Hill. So what they do as well with Scientology is they twist language. Rehabilitation project force. Just think about what that means and what it actually means. So, rehabilitation project force is not for rehabilitating people; it's for punishment. This is what you got to remember when dealing with cults or anything cult-like. Is that even current social justice warriory is that language does not mean what you think it means. When you listen to something, when you listen to something and it doesn't sound quite right, listen to it, break down the words. It's one way to not get sucked in by this stuff. So Leahy also ordered Scientology to stop harassing the mother and her partner. Right. Mr. Justice Leahy revealed his conclusions in a public hearing because of their significance. So here's what he said. Scientology is both immoral and socially obnoxious. In my judgment, it is corrupt, sinister and dangerous. It is corrupt because it is based on lies and deceit, and it has a real objective money and power for Mr. Hubbard and his wife and those who keep close to him at the top. It is sinister because it indulges in infamous practices both to its adherents who do not toe the line unquestionably, and to those outside who criticise or oppose it. It is dangerous because it is out to capture people, especially children and impressionable young people, and indoctrinate and brainwash them so they become unquestioning captives and tools of the cult, withdraw from ordinary thought, live in relationships with others. Well, you got to remember when a judge comes out with something like this, it is really serious. That's not your everyday kind of language for a judge to be using. A church spokesman described the judgment as a travesty of British justice and alleged there had been no opportunity for Scientology itself to submit evidence. Mr. Justice Leahy had observed Scientology's lawyers had been in contact with the father and had opportunity to answer the allegations made in the case. The judgment was taken to the Court of Appeal the next year, where it was upheld. So other cases that there are. So 1966, newspapers highlighted the case of Karen Henslow, a 30-year-old woman who had a history of psychiatric problems but had been recovering, who appeared to suffer ill effects after going to St Hill and taking part in Scientology practices. The case was taken up by newspapers, which published a disconnection letter from Karen to her mother, and by local MP Peter Horden. Hubbard responded to the case next year by sending out a letter to every member of Parliament complaining of libellous attacks from the newspapers, with a lurid turn of mind. So here you've got Karen. She has psychiatric problems. So when you're in the Church of Scientology, you're not allowed to take psychiatric drugs, because your only real problem is going clear. If you can go clear, you can become a superhuman being, which means it's mind over matter, which has in quite a few cases turned pretty nasty. So, in the 70s, the church attempted to sue Geoffrey Johnson Smith, MP for East Grinstead, over claims he made on BBC TV that families were being alienated by the disconnection policy. In court, he produced evidence of specific cases which are not disputed by Scientologists. One of the witnesses against Johnson Smith was William Hamlin, MP, who had taken a course at St Hill to find out more about Scientology and described the course as first rate. The jury decided Johnson Smith's comments were substantially true and made in good faith. Well, what a surprise! An MP bending the knee for someone who could possibly have put money in his back pocket. Mental health, according to a memo on the 6th of May 1971, Hubbard blamed the National Association for Mental Health and the World Federation for Mental Health for attacks on Scientology, and named Mary Appleby, the secretary of NAM, as the ultimate source. It started in 1969. The NAM were the target of mass infiltration campaign by Scientologists who tried to take over key offices and change the organisation's policy on psychiatry. The large numbers of new membership applications just before a deadline raised the suspicion of existing members and led to a mass expulsion. The Church of Scientology sued unsuccessfully in an attempt to get their members reinstated. In 1988, Scientology connected group the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, CCHR, conducted a defamation campaign against Professor Sir Martin Roth, a Cambridge University professor of psychiatry. Material provided by the CCHR falsely alleged that the experiments run by Roth had damaged patients' brains with huge doses of LSD. Led to more than 20 deaths in an Australian hospital and maimed human subjects in Canada. The Newcastle Times, which had published an article based on the CCHR material, admitted the falsity of the allegations and paid substantial libel damages in 1990. Again, this is further evidence of the Scientologists going after psychologists. So then we go into Operation Snow White, which is not an operation by the police. It was an operation by the Church of Scientology to neutralise unfavourable information in government files internationally. Project Witch, the UK branch of Project Snow White, was directed at the UK branch of Interpol, the Royal Navy and various government ministries. Among the documents seized in the 77 raid show that Snow White was a memo from Jane Kember, the Church's worldwide head of intelligence. Kember announced that Scientology agents had obtained a Metropolitan Police report on the Church and had asked for related documents so that a lawsuit against the police could be mocked up. So 2006, a new Church of Scientology centre opened on Queen Victoria Street in the City of London next to the Faraday Building. David Miscavige, chairman of Scientology's Religious Technology Centre, came to the UK for the ceremony. Local dignitaries who also attended the opening included Chief Superintendent Keith Hurley, the City of London Police lead officer for faith issues. That might be something we might talk about, the City of London Police, because that's very, very interesting. Hurley's speech thanked the Scientologists for their efforts on the 7th of July attacks and described So 7th of July, that'll be the 7th. That'll be the 7/7 attacks, and described Scientology as a force for good. This prompted the anti-cult group Family Action Information Resource to openly criticise Hurley. The next month, FOI requests by the Guardian and Daily Mail revealed that more than 20 city officers had accepted dinners free entry to Mission Impossible 3 premieres or other hospitality from the church, including meetings with Tom Cruise. Nearly 2 years later, the City of London police issued a court summons to a teenage protester refusing to take down a placard calling Scientology a dangerous cult. They later dropped the case on the advice of the CPS. 2007, it emerged the Association for Better Living and Education, a Scientology-connected charity which promotes Narconon and Criminon, had paid for stalls at the Labour and Conservative Party conferences. The Labour's decision to accept the money was taken by its NEC, and a spokesman described it as purely a business transaction. TV. I didn't know this one. Television adverts for the Church of Scientology were aired in the 1990s on Super Channel, but in February '93 were banned by the ITC after complaints. The ban was lifted in April '96. Later that year, the church produced an advert in which many people of different nationalities speak the word trust. It appeared initially on the cable channels UK Gold and UK Living, and moved to Sky News and other channels, this being the UK's first ever national advertising campaign for religion. Heber Gents, president of the Church of Scientology International, came to the UK to launch the campaign. The Advertising Standards Authority censored the church for a poster campaign saying they had cured over 250,000 drug addicts. Again, more evidence of them inflating figures. The figure was a count of everyone who completed the detox program, the Church of Scientology's detox program, including those whose drug exposure was infrequent use of alcoholic drinks or prescription drugs. So the ASA just carried on hammering the Church of Scientologists. So then it's an ad from the Guardian got pulled up by the ASA. The ad was banned by the ASA for substantial evidence claim of helping 24 million people. Two other grounds claiming misleading facts in the ad were not upheld, including the church had educated 19 million people on the facts about illicit drugs and made tens of millions aware of their human rights. So the Church of Scientology said to this, the Advertising Standards Authority found the church's 2015 ad accurately reported its campaign to educate people away, blah, blah, blah. So back to L. Ron, who I haven't talked about for quite a while. So I assume because of heat in America, Hubbard moved to England in 1959 and stayed there until 1967. So while he was here, things that happened in Scientology. So he bought St Hill Manor, which I've talked about already. The FDA raided the founding Church of Scientology and seized 100 of the church's e-meters as illegal medical devices. That was in 1963. 1965, the Church of Scientology was banned in several Australian states, starting with Victoria. The ban was based on the Anderson report, which found the auditing process involved command hypnosis, in which the hypnotist assumes positive authoritative control over the patient. 1966, Narconon was founded. Hubbard declared South African Scientologist John McMaster to be the first true clear. So 1967, that's when L. Ron Hubbard founded the Sea Organisation, or the Sea Org. The The Sea Org's a nice little thing. You only sign a billion-year contract when you join the Sea Org. And then also in 1963, OT3 is made available to Scientologists. So what happened in Scientology is you had the original plan for Scientology where you went clear. So basically what happened is then, so people pay so much for auditing, so much to reach each level, so then they go clear. So what happens? So once you're clear, that's the end of Scientology. You don't need Scientology anymore. So what happened was people were going clear. So then you have to have an extra level. So people keep doing their auditing and keep paying the money in. So then you have to have OT3, so you go up to OT3 in 1967. So I'm not sure where they're at now, but there are still levels being added onto it. So for these are I assume British authors that Scientology has fell out with. Cyril Vosper, who was a Scientologist for 14 years, became disillusioned and wrote a critical book called The Mindbenders. In 1972, the church sued to prevent publication, claiming that as a condition of taking the special briefing course at St. Hill, he had agreed not to divulge its content to anyone. So Lord Denning dismissed the case, arguing that the material was sufficiently dangerous for the public interest to override a confidentiality agreement. So you've got Roy Wallace, a sociologist of religion, who investigated Scientology in the 70s, wrote The Road to Total Freedom, a sociological analysis of Scientology, tracing its evolution from a cult to an authoritarian religious sect. Before publication, he made 100 edits in negotiation with the church, although this was not made clear in the book itself. The church denounced the book as bias selective, would later describe it as fair and reasonable. After the book's publication, a Scientology agent had visited Stirling University, where Wallace was teaching, and tried to get him to implicate himself in the drug scene. Subsequently, forged letters, apparently from Wallace, were sent to his college, implicating him in scandalous activities, including a homosexual love affair. Journalist Russell Miller wrote a biography of L. Ron Hubbard entitled Barefaced Messiah, which was published in 1987. He was spied on while researching the book in the US, and his friends and business associates received visits from Scientologists and private detectives. This is another thing Scientologists do. They employ a lot of private detectives to do their dirty work for them. Attempts were made to frame him for the murder of a local London private detective, the murder of singer Dean Reed in East Berlin, and a fire in an aircraft factory. All small stuff. Senior executives at publishers Michael Joseph at the Sunday Times, which serialised the book, received threatening phone calls and also a visit from private investigator Eugene Ingram, who worked for the church. Another private investigator, Jarl Grieve Einar Sinwolf, told Sunday Times journalists that he'd been offered large sums of money to find a link between Miller and the CIA. Stuart Lamont wrote Religion Inc., which was published in 1986. It began with the church's cooperation, but Lamont refused to let their representatives review it before publication. So then he gets a campaign of phone calls and letters from Scientologists, including legal threats. Private detective attempted to get damaging information about Lamont from his ex-wife, and other people posing as bank representatives contacted his neighbours. A Scientology spokesman accused Lamont and his publishers of exaggerating the response to generate publicity. Paul Brachy was a journalist at the Evening Argus in East Grinstead and later the Daily Mail. He had revealed in 2007 that after he started investigating Scientology, he was subject to what he calls a vicious smear campaign, including defamatory leaflets, threatening letters, faxes, and an attempt to find his ex-directory telephone number. John Atack, an ex-Scientologist who left in 1983, wrote the book A Piece of Blue Sky, Scientology, Dianetics and L. Ron Hubbard Exposed. So he provided help to other members in leaving the organisation, as well as acting as an expert witness in various cases concerning Scientology. So in response to that, his house was repeatedly picketed by placard-carrying Scientologists over the course of 6 days. They were probably what's called squirrel busters. These are people that hassle people that leave constantly. 1997, Richard Ingram's co-founder of the Private Eye made negative comments about L. Ron Hubbard in a column for The Observer. Scientology internal facts from the United States leaked to Observer to journalist William Shaw called for an operation to discredit him and to write a response. He listed details of his personal life and told the recipient to find, investigate and document scandals Ingram's is for sure part of. And Andrew Morton wrote an unauthorised biography of Tom Cruise. He was the guy that did the Diana one, if you remember that. It alleged Scientology had almost taken over the actor's life and he was in effect a number 2 person in the church. The church denied this and the book was not published in the UK for legal reasons. Cruise's lawyer Bert Fields gave interviews in which he denounced the book as poorly researched and a rehash of tired old lies. The Complex, an insider exposes the covert world of Scientology, an Irish book by ex-Scientologist Don Duggan, was removed from Amazon and other booksellers in 2008 after complaints it's defamatory, which the publisher denied. 2020 Television made 2 documentaries in the Big Stories series for ITV for Inside the Cult. An undercover reporter joined staff in Poole and East Grinstead and was invited to join the Sea Org. The church said the programme took everything out of context. In the S-Files, broadcast on 28th of November 1996, former staff at Poole confessed to financial malpractice. The family of a young ex-Scientologist blamed church harassment for contributing to his suicide, a charge countered by spokesman Mike Rinder. Mike Rinder is now a leading anti-Scientologist. In advance of the first broadcast, the Church of Scientology took out a private prosecution against the reporter, producer and production company, which was eventually thrown out as abusive. They also tried to ban the programme but refused by the AG. At around the time, cars belonging to the team had the windows smashed in and the reporter's mobile phone was cloned and used to run up huge bills. The staff said these were part of a harassment campaign in response to the documentary, although no connection with Scientology was ever proven, and the allegations were denied by the church. So, Channel 4 did a documentary called Secret Lives L. Ron Hubbard, which was in 1997. Programme makers had all kinds of forms of harassment. Eugene Ingram, the private detective I mentioned earlier, visited friends and associates of members of the team, spreading rumours, saying they were involved in crimes including money laundering. Scientologist agent phoned friends of the doctor and producer, posing as a member of a survey organisation, and tricking contacts into revealing their addresses. Those who did were visited by private detectives. It's not known how the agent obtained the numbers that the programme makers had dialed from their private phones. During the making of the programme, crew said they were trailed by private detectives in the United States, Canada and England. A film crew calling itself Freedom TV made unannounced visits to the homes of the programme makers to film them. The church said it was investigating whether the programme was part of a campaign to extort money from them. You've also got the John Sweeney panorama, which is absolutely brilliant. That's where you see John Sweeney shouting at Mike Rinder. that's well worth a watch. So yeah, the Church of Scientology, you should be able to find that somewhere. John Sweeney losing his temper. He was screaming at the face of spokesman Tommy Davis at an psychiatry of an industry of death exhibition. As he had with Secret Lives, John Travolta personally appealed to the channel's executives to cancel the broadcast. Church of Scientology was also responded by distributing its own documentary on DVD. When the Panorama team were filming in the US, Scientology representatives followed and repeatedly rang them. Unknown men trailed the team, one appeared at John Sweeney's wedding. Sweeney later complained of being chased around the streets of Los Angeles by sinister strangers. In LA, the moment our hire car left the airport, we realised we were being followed by 2 cars. In our hotel, a weird stranger spent every breakfast listening to us. When the crew returned to London, Church executive Mike Rinder was sent from the United States to lobby the BBC, even camping out at their offices. Private Eye has also had trouble from them as well. That's... So they were spoken about Narcanon. So yeah, so there you go. That's some part of the history of Scientology in the UK. So right, that is me done for another week. I'm not actually sure what I'm doing next week or who I'm doing it with. I am going to be joining Brutus in a bit. We are talking about somebody. I don't know who. So if you go over to Brutus's YouTube channel, you'll find him over there. And this is me signing out for the evening. Don't forget, kids, stay spooky.